So I came across a scenario in my home that required a solution. I thought the solution might actually help somebody else with a similar issue. I have a sump pump which pumps water out of the foundation of my home, and the pump still pumps, but the float on it no longer works. The pump just stays on, and fortunately I was home when it broke. Otherwise, it probably would have burned itself out. So I have a new pump on order. But in the meantime, the ground is very wet, and I got tired of going down there once an hour and turning it on and then quickly turning it off when the sump emptied. So I thought it might be fun to come up with a scenario where I would have really geeky things turning it on and off. Um, Please don't put in the comments, this is a stupid idea, don't do this. I know. I just thought it'd be a fun little project to do before the new pump arrives. I don't recommend this to anyone, but you may find a use outside of a sump pump. Something else where you want something triggered, some logic to happen, and then things that go beyond if. Now, if you haven't used if before, essentially what if is it just you could say if this event happens, then if this trigger happens, do this other thing. If it starts raining, close the windows. If it's sunset, turn on the lights. With if, you're a little bit limited um, to just very simple triggers, and I needed something a little bit more complex. So in the past, you used to be able to use Stringify. There's a new service called Apilio. I don't even know if that's how it's pronounced. So I'm going to step you through how to do that in Apilio, or however it's pronounced. Um, the first thing to do is to create a Boolean variable, on or off. So in this case, I created sump pump wet. You really wouldn't want sump pump dry. You really just need to know a single variable. Wet is sump pump wet is either true or false, and currently it's false at 11:47. Once that is created, you go and you create a condition. A condition is essentially a listener, and it executes when the condition becomes true. So in this case, I have tied this condition to the Boolean variable sump pump wet. So when this is true, it's going to execute um, logic block code, which we'll look at in a second. Actually, why don't we just scroll over there right now? So this is where the kind of the fun begins, is that now you can come in here and execute some, not code, but logic, um, and to perform some other actions. Whereas in if, you were just limited to very simple, like I said earlier, if this happens, then do this one thing. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the sump pump on, which is right here, and then I'm going to turn the sump pump off. And the beauty of this is that I can put a delay. Now this delay means 15 seconds. Don't execute sump pump off for 15 seconds. So what this really means ultimately is that the sump pump will be turned on, and then 15 seconds later it will be turned off. Um, Now, one thing I want to note with Apilio, it's not connected to any devices itself. It is just a rules engine. I come from software development, where you might have a local store in your application where the store is just basically whatever you tell it to be. And it doesn't change unless you change it. So the same is true here. These variables are local variables to Apilio. There are no devices or triggers or anything like that in here. So, how does you know how does this work? How does it work with IFT and with SmartThings, or any other third-party service? What happens is I in IFT, one of the things that you can do is have IFT change the variable in Apilio when something happens. So it starts here. If sump pump detected moisture, just take a step back. I've got a water sensor um, in the sump, and about halfway up, there's the sensor. And when that when that gets wet, it comes in here, and I've created a trigger to change this variable that we talked about a minute ago in Apilio. It changes this to true. So just to walk you through this, what happens is, when this becomes true, this condition becomes true that we saw a second ago. And that then triggers the logic blocks to update, which are over here. And this then, actually, why don't we edit that one? It's a little easier to see. This then tells SmartThings to turn the pump on and turn pump off. Or I'm sorry, it tells if to do that, and then if to actually does tell SmartThings. So what's unique about this whole setup with Apilio is that you can actually create something called webhooks. Now, and I come from software development, where a webhook is something where you can call a service to say something's been processed, some other kind of event happened, or you want to update data or whatever. So in this case, where Apilio is actually calling IFT to say perform an action. So let me show you how that works. So if we come in here and you just create a regular trigger like you would, only this time it's really not a trigger, it's a webhook under the covers. So if I come in here, Apilio, and so here's where it is, receive an event from Apilio. So, and there it is. It picked up my events that I've created in Apilio, and it can then use them as a trigger. So I had created the two if actions, sump pump on and sump pump off, and here you can catch them in a trigger. And then once you do that, you can do whatever you want to do. If that, so in this case, I've gone into, in this case, it's a Wemo plug. For some reason, SmartThings wasn't surfacing the Wemo plug as a Wemo plug in here. So then I could say turn on and turn off. Just say turn on, and it picked up my smart plug, which my sump pump is connected to. So it's really that simple. Now, so I've created a few triggers here. Sump pump on, sump pump off. And one of the things that I had to do also, this is a thing that's a bit of a pain with state management, is that because I had only used sump pump wet, I needed to set that back to false when I was done. So I actually had to make another trigger after it ran to say, once everything was done as part of sump pump off, I had to then tell it to go back to is sump pump wet equals false, so that it wasn't that state wasn't retained. So going back to what I talked about before, we have like a local store. These variables in Apilio are local. They stay the same unless you change them. So the sum result of all this, so you can see that is sump pump wet was last changed 11:47. It's 12:14 now. So to actually simulate this, I can actually just go and change the variable. So just to follow the process through again, if would have changed this when it heard from SmartThings that moisture was detected. Based on that if trigger, it would have set this to true, which would have then gone into cause this condition to also be true, the is sump pump wet. So that rule is sump pump wet must also is sump pump wet must be true. So that would have executed, and when that executed, it would have triggered the logic blocks to execute would have seen that sump pump on. Um, it would have, I'm sorry, triggered this one, which would have called the webhook in IFT to turn sump pump on, um, which then tells SmartThings to turn the sump pump on. And then 15 seconds later, the second condition would have triggered sump pump off, which would have told some IFT to tell SmartThings to turn the sump pump off, and then change the Boolean variable back here so that it's back to its normal state. And you can see I had set it to false a minute ago, or to true a minute ago. It's already executed the whole cycle. It only takes about 20 seconds, part of that being the 15-second delay. So once again, I don't recommend this for a sump pump, but you may find another use for it.